What's up again, everybody? It's Robert184, 2Rs2Bs, GundamReviews.net, and Sunday night, episode 49 of Gundam Age means that a year of episodes of the newest Gundam series has come and gone, and I've already done my wrap-up review where I take a look at the best of in terms of characters, mobile suit, and scenes of the week. That went a bit long, so anyway, here's some final thoughts on the final episode. The first one being, just to kick things off, that I thoroughly enjoyed this watching, but it's the kind of thing that you gotta be a bit careful of, because like with 00 and like with 00 Awakening of the Trailblazer, when you walk out of there, your opinion immediately during and after watching is certainly going to change upon reflection. So I sort of wanted to get this in the can and uploaded. Well, I've still got it fresh in my mind with mostly positive stuff. I have the feeling that it's certainly going to go down in opinion in my mind over time, especially stacked up compared to some other classic Gundam Final series finales. Nonetheless, kicking things off, I thoroughly enjoyed 80% of the episode. The best reason just being that it was moving in all the best parts. And for me, what did that all come down to? Well, it was the character of the week, that man right there, Flit Asuno. This whole show sort of bucked the trend by having 3 protagonists. That means you're not going to have enough time for everybody, and certainly things were rushed in lots of places. But in the end, Flit was the guy that we started rooting for at the very beginning of this, and he went over the edge as the series went on, and he came back, and when he did, they flashed back to him being a ghost. They flash back to show all the great people that we've seen and lost along the way, including Captain Grudek and, of course, Wolf and Yurin Lala Tifa soon. But it was great to see Flit go back there, and in the end, when he went Amuro Ray and called on both sides and got them all to move the rock, that for me is what Gundam's all about. You want to cheer for the protagonists, although they could have taken this show in a whole different path if they had done something different. But could you call him a hero? Could you call him a protagonist? He certainly would have broken the mold if Flit had pulled the trigger, but he didn't, which the pacifist and the people that hate the pacifists are certainly going to hurt. But if you want to cheer for the good guys being good, Flit made the right choice, and it was thanks to Kyo and his looking back. But the flashbacks and the team-up, yes, those moments right by themselves made this episode well worth it for me. We also got to see the bad guys repent in the form of Ezelkant. We also got to see Zayhart at the end of the last episode also sort of recant with Asim and reveal that he really wishes that he had had his kind of life and continued the life that they kicked off in high school. And finally, at the end of the episode, I really loved the way that they brought the 3 together, and they did indeed become history, as we got to see the Gundam in the museum, and we also got to see that family portrait, a fantastic way that I thought that they could end the show. However, on the other hand, you've got to think that you wonder if they shot 2 scenes as they took a look at Flit's statue there. One with Kyo's son there compared to the old man Asim and Kyo, who certainly looked like he put on age, and some weight around the chin. And you had to wonder if there ever was going to be, I'd love to hear the behind-the-scenes stuff. I'm sure it's going to come out, hopefully soon. For people that don't already know, I do not. If they had never planned to do a movie, if they would have done a movie, if things had gone well, if they had multiple endings depending. Anyway, it seems like Hino had an uphill battle dealing with people on the internet with this whole show. Anyway, it just was a cool way to wrap things up. And I just remember wanting more, and I was hoping that there was going to be a movie. Didn't happen, my prediction was wrong, but it was still a cool wrap-up to at least see the recognition of the history that they became. I think the biggest thing about this episode is going to depend on how you feel about your Gundam protagonists and how they should be. If you love cold killer Setsuna and Hiro Yui, compared to pacifist Setsuna F-Sei, who's not going to hurt anybody along the way, we've seen all sorts of Gundam pacifist and the warlike types on all sides. This one, I think, sort of had an interesting take on it just by having multiple perspectives within the same family and within the protagonists themselves, between Asim with his idealism and then his sort of realistic outlook, Kyo going too far in one direction, Flit going too far in the other. If you hate pacifists, you'll probably hate in the end what Kyo did. But if you do like hopeful endings, then I think it was going to be a lot of fun. But would you have had Flit pull the trigger and really take Gundam in a very dark direction, which we have seen when you look at the end of some of the shows? Could Age have been that when they were looking at the demographic they were, or it was the demographic they were looking for, nothing to play with that, it was just the way they wanted it to be, with that balanced, happy ending. In this episode in particular, I also found it quite fitting that they went to the Women Forgotten at Home During War End theme song, because really we did not see very much of that, and that's more a thought not necessarily on this episode. They threw in more female interactions just because they actually remembered Wendy existed. We got to see Captain Moe just be strong for a moment, and Asim's sister just taking care of some gym pilots there. But certainly they didn't have a big impact on the story unless you're just talking about creating offspring so that they can carry on and hop in a new age-numbered thing, which Wendy's purpose seems to have not been fulfilled in terms of an age 4. But in the end, I have to say that this episode felt like there were a lot of characters missing. By killing everybody off in episodes 47 and 48, I certainly let the focus be on these three. Asum didn't have a lot of time, Ezocan had his moments, we saw nothing of Zeragins in terms of character, but I can't help but wonder if 48, just if we had seen Zehart in this episode as the last boss, how would this have stacked up for fans? Would it have been a lot higher than just introducing a bad guy who has no introduction whatsoever? They barely played up. If he had been Ezelkant in personality, just with a younger body, you could see it, but he really had no relation there. They might as well just slapped on a whole different, a totally different character. But it just seems like some of the best developed characters, even though they weren't as good as they could have been, I'm talking about Flam and things like that, they at least had some development, and we just didn't get to see anything there outside of Flit resolving things in the past with Kyo's help. So episode 48, was that better for you with the kill 'em all attitudes there? And how did 49 stack up? I wonder if it's going to be in some people's minds sort of the end of the 08 MS team, where they're better off stopping one episode earlier, even though the war, they didn't have time to resolve it. And that's the kind of thing where when you have these shows, if you think back to something like, let's say, Star Trek Voyager, all of a sudden they're home and there's no resolution because they just don't have time for it because they're pumping the action right through to the end. It seems like 00 did a better job of that by having things wrap up over the last 2 episodes. With this one, it seemed a little disjointed between 48, 49. 48 wrapped up Asum and Zehart. 49 introduced a new bad guy and it went through 3/4 of the episode, and if it wasn't for Flit's voiceover, which is sort of cool that his was the voice to go all the way back to the voiceover at the beginning of the opening of season 1, it just seemed a little bit rushed, but that's going to happen in a lot of shows where there's lots of climaxes, and you have to wonder again if there ever was going to be a movie and if there would have been more time for us to see that. Probably not, because movies are just designed to be fast-paced 3-act things, but it just seemed like we got a little bit cheated in terms of the end resolution, and you have to wonder if having 3 generations of protagonists and antagonists, if that's just an inevitability. So as you may notice, this whole final thoughts video is sort of a hodgepodge. There's lots of good and bad, lots of things that could have been better, lots of things that could have been changed, but in the end, I think the best way for me to sum up the way that I feel about this is just at the end, when I was hoping for a movie, didn't happen, and then you just have to say, well, normally we'd get to watch the preview of what's coming up next week. And I have to say that next week, I'd want to be watching more Gundam Age if it was going to continue. A year-run anime, that's what they are in Japan. Gundam is a very different animal from a lot of the other shows, because let's say you're watching something like Super Sentai, and you know that when they have their epic final battle in the end and they throw 14 mechs together, or Zords or whatever, that there's going to be a new show with a new premise and a new hero, and it's going to start next week, and that's got to be exciting. Gundam, we don't have that. Now we're going to have to play the waiting game, and while we're waiting for the waiting game, there's certainly going to be the possibility that it's going to be way better than Age, but nonetheless, it's the kind of thing where I'm going to miss it next Sunday night, and it's the kind of thing that I think that sums up how you feel about the series. When you've watched the last show, did they leave you wanting more? And imperfect as it was, they did leave me wanting more episodes. So those are my thoughts on the last episode, though not necessarily on the whole series, so stick around, I may be around for something like that. But anyway, everybody, it's going to be fun as we get to see this whole cycle begin again, as we get the speculation about the origin and everything else. So stick around here for lots of news, reviews, and everything else you can use. And as always, it's a lot of fun to do this kind of thing with your feedback, with your participation, with people arguing and having a good time in the comment section down below. Always love to watch that, and it's been a lot of fun as I reflect back, not just on the episode, but one of the reasons why next Sunday night, well, it's not going to be quite the same, is because I've really enjoyed doing this. And the reason I've enjoyed doing this is because of the people out there watching it, commenting, and interacting, and that's what makes this a lot of fun. So definitely for me, Gundam Age on the air as opposed to nothing, well, I'm certainly going to miss it, so why don't you let me know what you thought of this final episode, of this review, of my review style for the whole series. Love to hear your comments, and stick around. Lots more Gundam to come. See everybody. And with that, 49 episode reviews also move on into history.